How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Everything's great. Nice to meet you.
Thanks. Yeah, you too.
Where are you located?
I am in Montreal, in Canada.
Montreal. Yeah, I'm in Kansas
Yeah.
City. I always hear wonderful things about Montreal.
Yeah, I hear great things about Kansas City too. You guys are famous for barbecue, amongst other things.
Barbecue and Charlie Parker. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, it's great to meet you. You got a great story. I'm looking forward to getting into it. So thank you for taking a minute out today.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having us. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
you bet. So before we get into the latest album, I want to know, 4 years ago, this pandemic, we didn't know when we were going to get out of it. It was raging. It really
Yeah.
went through the artists of the world in a very specific way. How did you survive that time period? And how did it either influence this new album or the way that you do things now?
Yeah. Well, actually, I think this project of ours, Les Arrivants, is a pandemic success story. If it wasn't for the pandemic, I don't think we would have met. One of us moved to Montreal as a result of being forced to stay here. Like he was visiting Montreal. My colleague Ben Shalev, hi Ben Shalev, he moved to Montreal because he was visiting and he got stuck. And so rather than go back to Argentina where he was living at the time, he just decided to stay in Canada. He had a Canadian passport, so he was able to do that. My other colleague Hameen had moved just like a few months before the pandemic started, and I moved in the middle of the pandemic. And I immigrated from the U.S. to Canada. I'm Jordanian from Palestinian origin, so I was pursuing
Better smile,
immigration in
you're
Canada, and we
around
got
the for
together.
in a
The
hurricane.
project was
Heartbreak
formed as a
meets the
result of a
skies. Your
residency in a music
goodness could make
center, in a
America
world music
kind
center.
again. Mr. Robert
And
Mueller gave
due to the
his old
restrictions
college
and the
try.
closures,
So let's have
it
another
was
cup of
kind of the only
coffee.
thing that we
Let's
could do
have another
legally,
piece of
like getting out of the house, because
pie.
Montreal had very severe, very strict COVID measures.
Yeah.
And one of the loopholes was if you were going to your place of work and you were in an essential industry and music was deemed to be an essential industry, um, that you could meet co-workers in a room, provided there's no more than three in one room and you're sitting, like 2 meters apart. So we started just getting together and rehearsing, as a way for us to get out of our houses. And with time, the bond that we shared just grew stronger and stronger because this was kind of like a formative experience that we were all going through. Um, and we started writing and composing music for the group. We recorded our first album, we released it. That was, a great experience for all of us. We decided to double down, and here we are with this latest album now.
So I guess the term "toward the light" makes sense. It kind of wraps it up.
Yeah, well, I think we got the idea of Toward the Light because, when we were forming our group, we were looking for names for it, and we decided to come up with the name Les Arrivants, which means the arrivals or the newcomers. And, we were facing some like pushback from certain friends of ours that like, we don't know if people are going to understand what the term means, and, it has a certain baggage to it. And then our good friend Kia Tabasyan, who's also the artistic director of the music center that we had the residency in, he gave us this quote from Victor Hugo in Les Miserables, which is, there are two kinds of people in life. The departures always face the shadows, and the arrivals always point towards the light. So we got the name of the second album from that, but also, the first album was kind of us trying to find a comfort zone in very uncomfortable times and very, times of discomfort, building homes for ourselves in a new place. With Towards the Light, we're kind of, doubling down on the discomfort, and we're embracing it and we're owning it, and we're taking it places that we think have promise, hence the
Absolutely.
album. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about your history in music. Take me back to
Yeah.
your beginnings. How did
Yeah.
music become a part of your world and become your career?
So I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. Like I said, I'm from a Palestinian family. So I moved to Jordan at age 4, displaced by the war there. I'm like multiple generations of war displacement. Um, and when I was growing up, I was immersed in music. Like it was everywhere around me, and I used to exhibit such a high degree of like interaction with it. And my parents noticed this, and I started studying the oud at a very young age. I was 7 years old when I started studying at the National Music Conservatory of Jordan. And then, I got to be technically pretty proficient by the time I was like 15, 14, 15. And then I started studying the cello, and I started playing with the orchestra in Jordan. And then for higher education, I actually did not study music. I studied political science, and I ended up getting like advanced degrees in political science and working in research and things like that. But the music was such an important part of my being that it stayed, and I kept practicing it in a very like high level of seriousness. I lived in the U.S. in like multiple cities. All my higher education I did in in the U.S. So I lived in Boston for 5 years, in Chicago for one, in DC for three. I lived in Michigan, I lived in Phoenix, and like wherever I went, I kind of built communities of music around me from whatever was available there, or and I also maintained like a professional level of music activity in my country, Jordan. So I started some projects. I recorded my first album, started recording my first solo album in 2016, released it in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. Um, yeah, and for me, music was always a way to connect me with people, and it was always a way to build a community around me, and it was always like a social activity. I know that there's a lot of solo artists out there who play music alone, but I was really never interested in having a solo career. I can play music on my own, but music is one of those things that's a lot more rewarding when you're sharing it with people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, one thing led to another, and we moved to Canada 4 years ago, and I was still, in a research job. I had my research job. I was doing it remotely, and then because of Les Arrivants, because of another like a number of other considerations, I just decided to become a full-time musician 3 years ago, and it's been great. I can't complain.
Who have been influences? Who's kind of swayed the way that you have played your
Yeah.
instrument?
Well, so I mean, the oud's an instrument with a very like broad geographical footprint. I mean, you can find it from Central Asia to North Africa and everywhere in between. Like Turkey, Armenia, Greece, Iran, the Arab world, Iraq, Syria, Egypt. Growing up, I would say I was I was very heavily influenced by Munir Bashir, who was an Iraqi oud virtuoso. He lived in Amman for a while towards the end of his life, and he kind of served as like a grandfather figure for me. He was a family friend. He used to come over, and he really pushed me to become a lot more technically proficient than I otherwise would have been. And I think you know I, the thing about music is it doesn't have geographical boundaries, right? Like it doesn't adhere to the boundaries of nation states, right? So like sound travels in ways that people can't, and so once I kind of immersed myself enough in Arabic music, I started discovering other influences in Turkey, in Armenia, in Greece, um, and because the oud has such a special place for all of these countries and all of these cultures, I started exposing myself to their methods and their schools of playing. And so I would say my most immediate influences are all Arabic oud players or Palestinian oud players like Ahmed Al Khatib, Nizar Rohana. Some of these are friends. Simon Shaheen. Some of them are friends, and some of them are just people I respect, like Anwar Ibrahim. But the thing about the one thing I aspire to is I aspire to having my own sound, like taking all of these influences and seeing what they're doing with the instrument and just trying to come up with something unique. And that's something I've tried to do all my life. And with time now that I live in Canada, I'm getting to discover Iranian music a lot more closely because there's such a abundance of great Iranian musicians in Canada. Yeah, and the learning never stops, the influence never stops, and you just have to be open. I think if you have an open mind, then you'll keep taking everything in and making something different out of it.
So, what do you like the best about being a professional musician? What do you look forward to every day?
I mean, on a day-to-day basis, I think you have to kind of self-motivate. You have to carve out time for practice. You have to carve out time for like all kinds of different things. But it's just the ability to express yourself in creative kind of ways. To have a way of delivering a message that you wanted to deliver. Because I studied political science, right? I wanted to, for the longest time, I sought to deliver the message that I wanted to deliver in, written form, in research form, like backed with facts and all of that. And, music is just more effective because it's less antagonizing for people. It's like people get less defensive about, when you bring data and you like throw it in people's faces, they get kind of defensive about like what does it mean, like, and a lot of people are deniers, like they just deny the fact that like this happened. With music you don't have the same dynamic. You can enter people's hearts and minds and souls in a way that doesn't antagonize them. Like the medium is so beautiful that I think people will give you a chance, which and that to me is just the most rewarding part, is that if I just show up to somebody and try and communicate my views on politics or my humanistic philosophy in words or in writing, they might not be as receptive to it. When I start playing, I think it captures their attention, and they're kind of forced to reckon with with the message.
So, why does this group work? What is it about you guys together in this collective that works
Yeah.
so well?
I think what works is, first of all, we share taste. Like this is the most elusive thing in the world of professional music, because like in professional music, everybody can play, right? Like everybody has like a minimum threshold of technical capability. But once you share taste with someone, then you can decide, okay, yeah, this sounds good and this doesn't sound good. And then you can start building something out of that. I think something else that defines us, that we're not, uh, like we're not afraid to experiment. We don't, we're not supremacists in the sense that we don't think our genre of music that we were trained in is superior to other genres of music. Like I don't think Arabic music is superior. Ben, my colleague, doesn't think tango is superior. Music is music, and we all approach it with the vein of equality and beauty, and like let's try and make something that transcends this. We don't really we're not comfortable with the label of world music, because in a sense it's a catch-all. Like everything can be dumped into world music, but it also increasingly like signifies things that we're not trying to do, like make people dance, or make people clap, or entertain. Like we're not, that's not what drives us. We're happy if people are entertained, but the primary goal is not entertainment. um, yeah, and I think just the commitment to equality. Like we share everything. We share the responsibility of you know um, the composition, the arrangement, the administration, um, and I think that's kind of pretty like unique, in the sense that everybody shares. There's a shared fate, that we all sense. We all kind of feel like we're in this together, and we bring our competencies to the project in different kinds of ways. So I think that's actually what makes us really really special. I mean, I think this commitment to equality even transcends music to like to humanity and politics and gender and everything, race, ethnicity, and I think that's something I personally treasure, and I think sets us apart.
So Towards the Light is the new album. If anyone wants to pick this up in the right way, see you guys live, any of the good work, any of your past work, where can they go?
Well, our website can kind of show where we've performed and where we're going to perform. So lesarrivants.com. Um, our music is available on all major streaming platforms. The CDs, if anybody still, has, CDs and
Yeah.
listens to music via CDs, we sell CDs on our website. Yeah, and we have social media channels. We have Facebook, we have Instagram. And I think our level of activity is picking up. We're starting to get more recognition in the U.S. Like we've had several really successful performances in the U.S. We're looking to go to Europe and internationally in the next year. But yeah, the website and social media is usually like where people find out what our activities, what our latest activities are. And we are working on a number of like exciting future collaborations. So we have an upcoming collaboration with a symphony orchestra in Montana, the Glacier Symphony Orchestra, where we're going to arrange some of our repertoire for symphony orchestra. So that's going to be exciting for us. And we are starting to work on album number 3. There's some like ideas in their embryonic stages, but it's coming along. And
Excellent.
So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to.
Excellent. It's great music. Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out to talk about it today. I appreciate it.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having us, and best of luck to you.